And this review, unlike my other ones, is of the most basic Marklin locomotive and has been so for around 50 years. Item number 30,000. This is the box. As we can see, it's decorated in the old livery of the Marklin packaging, with the side sketch of the engine that's inside, that is almost to scale. It still has, as seen here, the hobby logo, which is not used any longer, especially because Marklin has introduced a new system called the My World system, which is also branded for beginners. Now we have the inside of the box. It is reusable, as the Hornby ones are, and it comes with the old design of having a plastic wraparound casing. The locomotive fits inside, as like this, and even there is a space for the slider to sit, so that it is not being bent. The new style of packaging contains a foam inner rather than a plastic inner, as it's meant to be more protective, but I think that it's actually less secure. Now I move on to the next section of this review, for looking at the actual model. It is quite a nice model, really. It's small, but has quite a large amount of detail for what it is. The small pipes have been replicated almost exactly, and even things like the coal are still engraved. The main design features are disappointing. There are 3 of them. The first one is the headlights. If we have a look at them, we can see that they're recessed into the locomotive, unlike in the prototype, where they would have been hung on the end of the buffer beam. This gives an overall shabby look, because it makes the headlights look like they've been sunk in and a lazy job has been done, rather than the correct detail being applied. This is my second complaint in design looks, is of course when the locomotive is actually running like this. The headlights automatically come on, as I will explain later, but leave this light coming up just above the front wheel. Although this can sometimes look attractive, often it is quite frustrating, especially when you're getting these light marks which appear on the rails and the rolling stock beside it. My third disappointment is the internal inside of the cab. You can look through it as it is hollow, but if we look down we can also see that there's, well, maybe not in this video, but that the motor is situated inside. This actually looks like quite a decent model, especially because it only comes with, surprisingly for Marklin, a $150. Now for a look inside the locomotive. This is one of the old design of locomotives, and Marklin has been producing it for at least 50 years. Feel free to comment if you think it's been longer than that. And so, has a simple screw which releases the insides. As we can see here, the light is very bright and it's distorting the camera. So if we switch it off by taking the power out of the track, like this, we can see the electronics in detail. This engine, because of its delta design, still has, as seen in this image here, these small coding switches. This is the only way to change the digital address of the locomotive, unlike newer locomotives which can be programmed straight from the controller. This one needs you need to use the tip of a pen and switch them yourself. The globe is incandescent, which means it heats up very, very quickly, and as I will also talk about later, and there's a severe disadvantage to the running characteristics. Here we can see the mess of wires and cabling that makes up the motor unit. It's not particularly pretty, and isn't very efficient either, whereas on the other side it's quite blank. To oil we can see here that this is where the gears, where you need to oil them. Judging by the ease of how easy it is to take off the lid, I can say this is another bonus of the fact, and proof, that Marklin has designed this with the beginner in mind, unlike the Thomas locomotives. Now time to get this engine running. If we have a look at what the controller displays, of course, this is an old mobile station, we can see it actually has a light function button as well as a control gear button, though neither of these actually function on the locomotive. despite when I press this on and off, I'm still pressing it now, the light does not switch off, no matter what the icon says. Now to actually get it running. This is one of the downsides of the locomotive. Although on one bar, most Marklin engines usually move quite slowly at a nice shunting speed, this engine just hums like this, and doesn't move anywhere, because it is fitted with a very, very basic 3-pole motor. It has a very poor quality of running, and uses an extremely large amount of electricity. On 2 bars now, you can see that it's actually starting to move, and the noise has gotten more rhythmic. On 3, our engine starts just to move, and looks like now it's hit a bump in the track. If we put it back here, we can see that it's crawling along at a snail's pace. But as soon as we turn up to 4, the engine starts to move. Now we can still... And well, look what I've managed to do. During a review, I've managed to crash the train. That's great. Here we go, now the track cleared, we can start again. The engine's moving along once again at a very slow pace. Now they turn the control off, it starts to crawl along. Now it's on 4. As we can see, it's not moving along particularly quickly. But as soon as I turn the controller to 4 or even 5, now we come back to running this engine. So now it's moving quickly, but as soon as we move it to 5, it's flying. This, on the Marklin mobile station, is a 5th bar out of a possible 14. I honestly don't ever put it any higher, because I'm afraid that it'll going to fly off the tracks. Now if we bring it to the stop, we can see that this is what the second speed should be, but then after a while of being stopped, it soon slows down again. Another disadvantage is that when it's in reverse, the front lights still stay on, which is quite unprototypical. Okay, enough of This engine has quite a few technical difficulties. The first one, as I mentioned in the running section, was the motor quality. Because of the fact it has a 3-pole basic motor, the speeds are quite ragged and makes a large amount of noise as well as using lots of electricity. The second problem I have is the lights. Already we can feel the front of the locomotive is heating up very rapidly, and even if the engine is not in use, it is wasting the life of its bulb, and these are quite hard to replace. Other issues that this engine has is that it is often a big guzzler of oil. It needs to be oiled quite regularly, which for some people think is bad, because the oil can get in and wreck moving parts. I tend to agree with this. But if the engine's squeaking, it needs oil. Another problem that people often have with this locomotive is the fact that, quite frankly, it uses the old brush system due to its really old motor, and because of its inefficiencies, it wears these out rapidly. So, as a word of advice to anyone else, if your engine ever starts moving along really haphazard, forward, back, sort of along the lines like this, although not very good with my hand in it, then I recommend you replace the motor brushes immediately. That's what happened to mine in personal experience, and it can easily happen to other engines too, but this one's especially. Would I recommend you buy this locomotive? Yes. Apart from the fact that it looks ridiculously cute on your layout, it is a perfect steam engine to buy if you're a beginner, because despite the fact that it's slow and funny speed, its 6 powered axles with 2 traction tires we can see on the bottom mean it's extremely strong. Unlike some of the other unlike some of the other small steam trains that Marklin offers, which often only have one axle powered and can pull about 6 or 7 carriages, while this one could easily pull 20. So, despite its funny methods, it is actually still my favourite Marklin produced locomotive. So, if you feel like buying a Marklin train, the 30,000 is definitely